Three things I learned from minimalism. Minimalism. First, minimalism itself doesn't really make sense. Minimalism is basically the method. And the method states, with every single item you get rid, you will be a little bit more happier. Which of course is not true. It's true because many of us have too many items. But if you ask a homeless person to give away his pants, for example, out of the 5 items he owns, then that's a very complicated decision he has to make. Now, that's the first point. Minimalism only works in a certain range. Once you have all the items you need and you don't want to, then getting rid of more items doesn't make sense anymore. The second thing is minimalism is actually therefore not the goal. Minimalism is just the method. And therefore, it doesn't really make sense to just reduce the number of your items in your life. But what makes more sense is functionalism. And that's basically the second takeaway. It's not minimalism, it's actually functionalism. You can also call it essentialism, but I just would call it functionalism, because every item in your life, and this is what I basically have applied to my life now, has to have a function. The function can also be that it brings you enjoyment. The function, for example, of an old DVD or of a vinyl can be that sometimes there is this one moment where you just need to put on the vinyl instead of listening to Spotify, and then you have this very nice moment, and you also make yourself a cup of tea, and then the world is a little bit better again. This can also be the purpose, the function. But what doesn't make sense is to then try to get rid of items again and again and again. Because minimalism as a method of getting rid of things, just for the sake of getting rid of things, doesn't really work that well, only in a certain range. Now, the second takeaway was functionalism is actually the thing you want to aim for. And now, the third takeaway. Because I was, as many of us are, now the third takeaway, in a position where I just had too many items, minimalism, as the method, also helped me because it basically had the same, it resulted in the same actions as functionalism would. Therefore, minimalism helped me to actually get to functionalism, and it helped me to get rid of all these items that were actually unnecessary. Not really were they all unnecessary, but I often found better functioning items, for example. For example, I found that I, of course, could get rid of this one thing that I didn't need anymore and sell this thing and sell this thing and sell this thing, and instead buy a better notebook, because this is something I work hours and hours on every single day, and therefore it makes sense to get rid of these other things, because in relation to this notebook, for example, all these other things are pretty much unimportant. Of course, my running shoes, I wouldn't sell my running shoes if I run a few times a week to get the notebook. But if I have like 3 pairs of running shoes and I throw 2 of them into the trash, well, it could also depend on many different things what the outcome then actually is, or would be. But what I'm saying is this. I came from a place where I had a little bit too much things that actually had to be there. Basically, all these things were unresolved decisions, were unresolved problems, because I had to decide what to do with these things that were still in my life or still in my possession, but they didn't have a clear, defined, fulfilled function. And getting rid of all of these items brought, for one, clarity, because I had to come up with principles, I had to come up with decision rules that I can still apply nowadays. Functionalism, for example. And therefore, I still have these nowadays, and therefore I am also more clear on the things I do and purchase and might purchase, or the things that are in my possession nowadays. The second thing is, because you think so much about these things and what to get rid of and not to get rid of, your picture of all of the items you own becomes much clearer. And the third thing, in the third point, the third thing, third benefit of minimalism, then is that you just have a clear view of all the items you own. Everything you have, ideally optimally, has then a function, and if it doesn't fulfill the function anymore, or if something is there, maybe a newer or better phone, or I don't know, then you can just replace the item without feeling bad about it, because it's just functionalism. If there is something that has a better function, and you can sell the other item, and somebody else can still use the item, it just makes sense for both parties that you sell the item and you get something else.